Welcome to Sage Storytime, where we delve into the stories and teachings that have shaped our world. Today we invite you on a captivating journey through time to discover the life of one of the most influential figures in human history, Gautama Buddha. His story is not just a tale of a prince who became a sage. It's a narrative that has inspired millions, offering insights into the human condition and the path to enlightenment. Born over 2,500 years ago, in the foothills of the Himalayas, Siddhartha Gautama's journey is a testament to the human quest for meaning and understanding. From the luxurious confines of a royal palace to the serene austerity of a hermit's life, his journey encapsulates a transformation that has shaped the spiritual fabric of numerous cultures across the world. As we unfold the chapters of Siddhartha's life, we will explore not only the historical context of his time, but also the profound lessons embedded in his journey. From his early life of luxury to his profound enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, each step of his journey offers a mirror to our own paths towards understanding and peace. Join us as we step back into the ancient world, tracing the footsteps of Siddhartha Gautama and unraveling how a prince became Buddha, the Enlightened One. In the verdant plains of Lumbini, which now lies in modern-day Nepal, a significant event occurred over 2,500 years ago. It was here that Siddhartha Gautama, a figure destined to profoundly impact human consciousness, was born. His birth was not ordinary. It was surrounded by auspicious signs and prophecies that foretold his extraordinary path. Siddhartha was born into royalty. His father, King Suddhodana, ruling the Shakya clan, and his mother, Queen Maya, known for her virtue and beauty. The night before Siddhartha was born, Queen Maya dreamt of a white elephant with 6 tusks descending from heaven, signifying the coming of a great leader. Siddhartha's birth was said to be painless and miraculous, with legends stating that he walked immediately after birth, lotus flowers springing from where his feet touched the ground. His birth was a moment of joy and wonder, yet it was tinged with sorrow, as Queen Maya passed away just 7 days later, leaving Siddhartha to be raised by his stepmother, Queen Mahapajapati. From an early age, Siddhartha's life was marked by luxury and opulence. The king, wanting to shield him from the harsh realities of life, confined him to the palace grounds, surrounding him with beauty and pleasure. He was given the best education, mastering scholarly and martial arts, and was attended to by a host of servants. Despite these comforts, Siddhartha was innately curious, his mind often pondering over the mysteries beyond the palace walls. When Siddhartha was still a young boy, a great seer named Asita visited the palace. Upon seeing the child, Asita wept, for he knew he would not live to see Siddhartha become a great spiritual leader. As predicted by the signs at his birth, he prophesied that Siddhartha would either become a great king, should he remain in the palace, or a great spiritual leader, should he venture outside. This prophecy troubled King Suddhodana, who desired for his son to succeed him as a ruler. In his youth, Siddhartha showed an early disposition towards contemplation and compassion. Stories tell of him meditating as a child, showing deep empathy towards animals and people alike. Despite his father's efforts to shield him from life's sufferings, Siddhartha's thoughtful nature led him to question the nature of human existence and the world beyond his sheltered life. Siddhartha married Princess Yasodhara at a young age, and they had a son, Rahula. Life in the palace was one of pleasure and indulgence, but Siddhartha's mind was never at rest. He was drawn to understanding the deeper truths of life, a yearning that would eventually lead him to a path far different from the one his father envisioned. Thus, the early years of Siddhartha Gautama were a blend of royal luxury and inner contemplation. His birth marked by prophecies of greatness, his upbringing, a preparation for a destiny that would veer dramatically from the path of a prince. Little did the world know that this young prince of the Shakya clan would one day awaken as the Buddha, whose teachings would illuminate the path to enlightenment for millions. Siddhartha Gautama's life, within the palace walls, was sheltered, but it was this very sheltering that ignited a profound curiosity within him about the world outside. This curiosity set the stage for a series of encounters that would profoundly alter the course of his life, encounters that have come to be known as the Four Sights. The first of these encounters happened during an unauthorized excursion beyond the palace walls. Siddhartha, in the company of his charioteer Channa, saw an old man, frail and bent over. He was baffled by this sight, for he had never been exposed to the realities of aging. Channa explained that aging was an inevitable fate that befell all humans. This revelation deeply disturbed Siddhartha, awakening him to the inescapable nature of aging and the suffering it entailed. On subsequent outings, Siddhartha encountered more of life's harsh truths. The second sight was a sick person, writhing in pain and suffering. Siddhartha was deeply moved by this scene, realizing that sickness was a universal and inescapable aspect of human life. The third sight was even more impactful, a corpse being carried to its final rites. The stark reality of death struck Siddhartha with the impermanence and fragility of life. These encounters with old age, sickness, and death were profound teachings about the nature of human existence, exposing the realities that his life of luxury had shielded him from. The fourth and final sight provided a stark contrast to the first three. Siddhartha saw a wandering ascetic, a monk who had renounced worldly life. Despite the monk's apparent lack of material possessions and comforts, there was a serene countenance on his face, suggesting a level of peace and contentment. This sight intrigued Siddhartha and offered him a glimpse of a path that led away from the sufferings he had witnessed. It introduced him to the possibility of a life devoted to finding deeper meaning and understanding. These four encounters, with old age, sickness, death, and a monk, were turning points in Siddhartha's life. They stirred within him a deep existential quest. The realization that no amount of privilege or protection could shield one from suffering, and the understanding that a spiritual path might offer a way to transcend this suffering, planted the seeds of his future spiritual journey. The impact of these sights cannot be overstated. They compelled Siddhartha to think deeply about the nature of life and the universality of suffering. He realized that the luxuries of palace life could not provide lasting happiness or shield him from life's inevitable sufferings. This led to an inner turmoil as he grappled with the stark realities of life and his role in the world. Siddhartha's experiences of the four sights were a direct confrontation with the truths of human existence, truths that are often ignored or hidden away, but are integral to the human experience. These sights set Siddhartha on a path of deep questioning and reflection, ultimately leading him to seek a deeper understanding of life and suffering. The journey that followed would transform him from a sheltered prince into a seeker after truth, setting the stage for one of the most significant spiritual quests in history. In the stillness of a moonlit night, Siddhartha Gautama, the prince of the Shakya clan, experienced an inner upheaval that would lead to one of the most significant moments in his life, the Great Renunciation. This pivotal event marked his departure from the palace, his family, and his royal responsibilities, setting him on the path to becoming the Buddha. After the profound realizations brought about by the four sights, Siddhartha found his life within the palace walls increasingly suffocating. The luxuries that once pleased him now seemed trivial and hollow in the face of the universal sufferings of old age, sickness, and death. The inner conflict between his life of privilege and the suffering in the world became unbearable. The final push came with the birth of his son, Rahula. While Siddhartha loved his son, he also saw the birth as a potential attachment that could hinder his search for truth. He realized that his responsibilities as a prince and a father would prevent him from seeking answers to the profound questions that haunted him. Thus, at the age of 29, in a decision that epitomized courage and sacrifice, Siddhartha decided to leave the palace. He left quietly, not wanting his departure to be hindered. He bid a silent farewell to his sleeping wife and child, a moment that was both poignant and heart-wrenching. Accompanied only by his loyal charioteer Channa, he rode his horse Kanthaka into the dark night, away from the life he had known. Upon reaching the distant woods, Siddhartha took a symbolic step to renounce his royal life. He removed his royal garments, cut off his hair, and donned a simple ascetic's robe. This act was not just a physical transformation, but a symbolic shedding of his identity as a prince. He sent Channa back with his horse, choosing to embark on his spiritual journey alone. The Great Renunciation was a moment of profound selflessness. Siddhartha's decision was driven by a deep compassion for all beings and a relentless quest for enlightenment. He sought answers to the end of suffering, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. This renunciation was not an act of escapism. Rather, it was an act of embracing a greater responsibility, the responsibility to seek, and impart wisdom. As Siddhartha ventured into the forest, he stepped into the life of an ascetic. This new chapter was a stark contrast to his royal upbringing. He sought teachers and engaged in various spiritual practices, seeking to understand the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. He underwent rigorous ascetic practices, believing that through physical discipline and denial, he could attain spiritual insight. This period of Siddhartha's life was marked by intense spiritual striving. He subjected himself to extreme fasting, breath control, and isolation. He pushed his body to its limits, seeking enlightenment through the mortification of the flesh. However, despite his sincere and arduous efforts, the ultimate answers to his questions about suffering and liberation eluded him. The Great Renunciation was the beginning of Siddhartha's transformational journey from a prince to an enlightened teacher. It was a journey that would challenge his beliefs, his endurance, and his very understanding of spiritual practice. This journey, characterized by deep introspection and relentless questing, would eventually lead him to the profound realizations for which he is now revered across the world. After renouncing his royal heritage, Siddhartha Gautama embarked on a journey of extreme asceticism, believing that the path to enlightenment lay in severe physical discipline and self-denial. This chapter of his life was marked by intense spiritual practices, which he pursued with the same dedication that he had shown in his princely duties. Siddhartha's quest led him to the company of renowned ascetic teachers of his time. He first studied under Alara Kalama, mastering the meditation techniques and achieving high states of meditative consciousness. However, he soon realized that while these practices brought temporary peace, they did not lead to the ultimate understanding of suffering and its cessation. Siddhartha continued his quest and became a student of Uddaka Ramaputta, achieving even higher states of meditative consciousness. Yet again, he found that these achievements, impressive as they were, did not provide the answers he sought about the nature of suffering and the path to its end. Convinced that enlightenment required even more rigorous discipline, Siddhartha began to practice extreme asceticism. He lived in the forest, far removed from the comforts of civilization, enduring harsh conditions. His daily regimen was one of rigorous austerity. He ate very little, surviving on minimal sustenance, sometimes just a few grains of rice a day. He exposed himself to the extremes of weather, enduring the scorching heat and the chilling cold. His body became emaciated, his strength waned, and his appearance became ghostly. During these years, Siddhartha's dedication to his ascetic practices earned him 5 companions, other ascetics who were impressed by his rigor and discipline. Together, they pursued the path of extreme austerity, believing that enlightenment was attainable through the denial of physical needs and desires. However, after 6 years of such intense practices, Siddhartha's health deteriorated severely. He was on the brink of death, and yet enlightenment seemed no closer. It was in this state of physical exhaustion and near death that Siddhartha had a critical realization. He remembered a time in his childhood when he had spontaneously entered a state of serene concentration while sitting under a tree. This memory triggered a profound insight. The path to enlightenment did not lie in self-mortification and extreme asceticism, but rather in a balanced approach to life. This realization marked a turning point in Siddhartha's spiritual journey. He accepted milk and rice from a village girl named Sujata, an act that was symbolic of his rejection of extreme asceticism. This decision led his 5 companions to abandon him, as they believed he had given up his quest and reverted to a life of luxury. Siddhartha, however, was undeterred. Strengthened by his new insight, he decided to pursue a middle path between the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-denial. He sought a balanced approach to life, one that embraced neither luxury nor austerity. This middle way, as he later taught, was the true path to enlightenment. Having renewed his body and mind, Siddhartha now prepared for the final stage of his quest. He journeyed to Bodh Gaya, where he sat under a Bodhi tree, determined to meditate until he found the answers he sought. The years of austerity had been crucial to Siddhartha's journey. They had tested his resolve, refined his understanding, and ultimately led him to the path that would culminate in his enlightenment. As Siddhartha Gautama sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, he was at a pivotal point in his spiritual journey. He had renounced the luxuries of his princely life and the extremes of asceticism, arriving at the understanding that neither path led to true enlightenment. Now, embracing the middle way, a path of balance and moderation, he was poised to uncover the profound truths he had been seeking. Siddhartha resolved to sit in meditation under the tree until he attained full enlightenment. As he meditated, he entered deeper states of concentration, his mind becoming more focused and tranquil. He confronted and overcame the forces of Mara, symbolic representations of the temptations, fears, and doubts that hinder spiritual progress. Mara challenged Siddhartha's right to seek enlightenment, but Siddhartha remained unmoved, his resolve unshaken. He touched the earth, calling it to witness his right to become enlightened, a gesture that symbolized his deep connection to the world and the universality of his quest. As the night deepened, Siddhartha's meditation grew more profound. He attained a state of deep insight, which illuminated the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. He realized the Four Noble Truths: the truth of suffering, dukkha; the truth of the cause of suffering, samudaya; the truth of the end of suffering, nirodha; and the truth of the path that frees us from suffering, magga. He understood that suffering arises from desire and attachment, and that by following the Eightfold Path, one could overcome this suffering. With this realization, Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment and became the Buddha, the awakened one. He had discovered the truths about suffering and the way to liberation, not through divine revelation or the teachings of others, but through direct experience and insight. The Buddha's enlightenment was a moment of profound significance, not just for himself but for the world. He had discovered a path to liberation that was accessible to all beings. His teachings would form the foundation of Buddhism, a spiritual tradition that has guided millions of people across centuries. After his enlightenment, the Buddha spent several weeks in the vicinity of the Bodhi tree, experiencing the bliss of liberation and contemplating how to communicate his insights to others. He pondered the profound depth of his realization and doubted whether others would understand the truths he had discovered. However, motivated by compassion, he decided to share his teachings to help others find the same peace and liberation he had attained. The Buddha's first teachings were not grand proclamations, but simple, practical teachings that addressed the fundamental aspects of human existence: suffering and the cessation of suffering. He taught the middle way, a path of moderation away from the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. He expounded on the Four Noble Truths and introduced the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide to ethical and mental development. The Buddha's journey to enlightenment under the Bodhi tree was the culmination of a deep and arduous quest for understanding. It was a journey that transformed Siddhartha Gautama from a seeker to a teacher, from a prince to an enlightened being who would light the way for generations to come. In the weeks following his enlightenment, the Buddha, formerly known as Siddhartha Gautama, contemplated the nature of the truths he had discovered and how best to share them with the world. His insights, profound and transformative, had the potential to alleviate the suffering of all beings. The Buddha realized that his teachings needed to be shared, and thus he embarked on the next phase of his journey, becoming a teacher. His first destination was Sarnath, near the city of Varanasi, where he sought out the 5 ascetics who had been his companions during his years of extreme asceticism. These men had abandoned him, believing he had strayed from the path of spiritual discipline. Yet, they were the first to witness the transformation in Siddhartha, the serene composure and the profound peace that he now embodied. Recognizing that Siddhartha had indeed attained a profound spiritual realization, they became his first disciples. The Buddha's first sermon, known as the Dhammacappapadana Sutta, or the setting in motion of the wheel of Dharma, laid the foundation for his teachings. In this sermon, he introduced the Four Noble Truths and the concept of the middle way. He spoke of the futility of indulging in sensual pleasures and the folly of self-mortification, advocating instead a balanced path of practical ethical conduct and mental development. The core of his teaching was the Noble Eightfold Path, which outlined the steps towards achieving spiritual enlightenment. This path included right understanding, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These teachings offered a practical guide to ethical and mental discipline, aimed at leading individuals towards liberation from suffering. The Buddha's teachings resonated deeply with those who heard them. His wisdom, grounded in personal experience and expressed with clarity and compassion, began to attract followers. This growing group of disciples became the first Sangha, or community of Buddhist monks and nuns. The Sangha played a crucial role in preserving and spreading the Buddha's teachings. It was a community based on spiritual endeavor, equality, and mutual support, transcending the rigid social structures of the time. As the Buddha continued to teach, his fame grew, attracting people from all walks of life. Kings, wealthy merchants, the poor, and the marginalized, all were drawn to his teachings of compassion, wisdom, and liberation. He traveled extensively across the Indian subcontinent, teaching and establishing monastic communities. The Buddha's teachings were revolutionary, emphasizing personal experience and practical understanding over ritual and dogma. He encouraged his followers to test his teachings through their own experience, rather than accepting them on faith alone. This empirical approach was one of the reasons his teachings appealed to a broad spectrum of people. In the years that followed, the Buddha established a robust framework for his community, setting guidelines for monastic life that ensured the stability and continuity of the Sangha. He also welcomed women into the community, establishing the order of nuns, despite the societal norms of the time. The Buddha's initial teachings at Sarnath set in motion a legacy that would last for millennia. His insights into the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation continued to be the cornerstone of his teachings throughout his life. The Sangha he established became a beacon of spiritual practice and ethical living, attracting countless individuals seeking solace from the suffering inherent in human existence. As the Buddha's teachings spread, they took root in diverse cultures and societies, evolving into various schools and traditions. The principles he taught over 2,500 years ago continue to resonate with millions around the world, offering guidance, hope, and a path to inner peace. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through the life of Gautama Buddha, we reflect on the profound legacy of a prince-turned-sage. His journey from the luxury of a royal palace to the enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, and then to a teacher whose wisdom transformed the world, is a testament to the power of inner transformation and the quest for truth. Buddha's life story is not just a historical narrative. It's a source of inspiration, offering insights into the human struggle with suffering and the pathways to transcend it. The Buddha's teachings, encapsulating the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, continue to resonate with millions today. They offer a guide to living a life of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, transcending cultural, temporal, and geographical boundaries. His message of the middle way, moderation, and the pursuit of spiritual understanding offers a beacon of hope and clarity in our often tumultuous world. As we conclude this episode on the origin story of Gautama Buddha, here at Sage Storytime, we hope you found inspiration and insight in the remarkable life of one of history's most influential figures. If this story has touched you, or if you know someone who could benefit from these timeless teachings, we encourage you to share this video. Spread the wisdom that has the power to transform lives. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories and teachings that delve into the depths of wisdom and spirituality. Your journey towards understanding and inner peace is important, and we are here to support and enlighten your path every step of the way. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May the lessons of Buddha inspire you to find your own path to enlightenment and peace. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep growing. Farewell, and may peace and wisdom light your way.